Hey everyone, Panyo here. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of After Dinner Mints. Before we begin, I highly encourage everyone watching to join us in the Art Blocks Discord. For those watching us on the live stream, there will be people in the community chatting in the Art Blocks Mints channel. A link to our Discord can be found in the description of this video. As always, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode of our weekly show. And now I want to introduce our guest for this afternoon. We have generative artist Thomas Lin Pedersen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Well, Thomas, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being on. I know we have a lot to cover, so I want to kind of get into it. Can you start out by, talking to us a little bit about your background and just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, I am not an arts major by any stretch of the imagination. I have had a rather weird trajectory career-wise. I'm a trained food scientist who went in the direction of microbiology and then into bioinformatics, which is really like data science on biological data, and then took the plunge into data science and then software engineering. So that has nothing to do with art at all, but um, art has kind of been on the sideline of my life for like not as far as I can remember. That would be a stretch, but for a long time, I was very interested in photography for a very very long time, until I got kids, more or less. And kids and chasing the right lightning is not something that jives particularly well. So that kind of put an end to it in some sense. I still enjoy it, but not. I don't have the time for doing it at the same level anymore. Um, and then, kind of by chance, I stumbled upon the idea of generative art on Twitter, and that kind of fitted into this vacuum of creative outlet that I was having at the moment. So I jumped right in. Um, it also it made a lot of sense to me. I'm in my day-to-day job. I'm working on developing the graphic tools box for the R language. So I'm doing a lot with graphics, even though it's professionally it's more tailored towards data visualization, but kind of the same ideas about putting stuff on screen. And if you get low enough in the level, then you like it doesn't matter whether you're drawing lines showing a temperature development or if you're drawing lines showing like art. So it was a great way for me to kind of use the things that I was working with in my day-to-day job, but in a more creative way.
That's awesome. And so I know you mentioned, I want to unpack it just a little bit. So you're a biologist, data scientist, software engineer, and then started learning about generative art through Twitter. Was there a specific, artist or, pieces of work that kind of, you kind of gravitated towards and piqued your interest?
Yeah, so I'm the first generative artist I stumbled upon. I remember quite vividly. It was in Convergent, or Anna Huff, who is an amazing generative artist that I by chance saw in my feed. And I kind of yeah, went into his work and was kind of um weirdly surprised that you could do this, in some like the idea of using the tools that I was developing professionally for doing art just hadn't occurred to me. And but the moment I saw it, it was like, of course, like that makes sense. So his work is, especially his earliest work, was very much inspired by a lot of biological systems, or at least like not not in a academic sense biological systems, but like the aesthetic and the things that he was trying to mimic was a lot related to dynamic behavior found in nature. And this was also like my onset and my get-go for creating generative art. So like a lot of the first work I did was very much inspired by his, at least in my mind. Yeah.
Very cool.
There are others I quickly latched onto. So Quasimodo, who is not, I wouldn't call him a generative artist, at least what he's doing now. He's more into pioneer in AI art. Was also someone that I like discovered quite early on, as was Tyler Hobbs. So I think like these were the people that kind of shaped me in the early years.
Very cool. Appreciate you sharing that. And so what was your introduction? Like, so you mentioned, these people influenced you kind of early on. Like, what was your introduction into the NFT crypto space, and how did you eventually learn about the Art Blocks platform?
Yeah, so I was doing art. So I learned about this in like generative art started in 2017 or something like that. And I was working creating art on off, sharing it on Twitter, like until now, basically. And at some point, I just like my community around generative art was increasing, and I got to know a lot of people in the community. I think around 2000, like late 2020, we saw uh, Dimitri's ringers drop, and I think like that was probably the first time I had heard rumors about like NFTs. I knew about crypto beforehand without having really been that much interested in it. But Dimitri began talking about ringers and all that, and I at that point I will say I had no like clue about why or how or what was even interesting about it. So I was just kind of shrugging it off, which is 85th ether after was probably a bad decision. But that's just the things that you miss in life, I guess. So I was kind of just watching it from the side, not really grasping the possibilities in it, nor did I really understand like why people would collect NFTs at that point.
Yeah.
I've been I've been schooled on that. So in early 2021, we had the rise of Higgett, and that was really where I latched on. It was an I would say like that was a unique time to be an artist. Like when Higgett was taking its first steps into the world. That was just an incredible community spirit that we had there, and just like a feeling of pushing boundaries and so on. So like that was really where I got like my taste of what it would mean to create crypto art, but certainly also what it meant to collect it.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I guess like the first time I heard about NFTs were in relation to art blocks, but my path into art blocks has been kind of through intermediaries.
Cool. That's great. And then I'm curious now, are you able to share some of those like early generated art pieces, and maybe even, the first NFT that you created, whether it be
Absolutely.
like, right?
Yeah. So yeah, you have my screen now. So yeah, these are my very first NFT. No, not my very first NFT. These are my first pieces of art back from 2017. Um, this is the first thing that came out of my first algorithm. So um, it has changed somewhat. My artistic vision has obviously changed. I was very much interested in kind of these more dynamic systems where you can kind of like these smoky feelings, as you can see, but also like trying to look into how you could um, like get different vibes within like that same kind of feel. um, and like around like this was the last series of my I would call it my first step at generative art, this attraction series. um, and I took a break after that for various reasons. And when I came back in 2019, I started on with my Genesis series, which ended up spanning quite a lot of pieces, and you can certainly see some inspiration and some things that I took with me onto Rapture here.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Um,
Genesis piece right there where it's like the three rings interlocking is honestly like one of my absolute favorites.
yeah, well, that's a crowd pleaser, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I love
Um, so yeah, and then kind of I began playing like much more with color, obviously. Here being much more determined about what I wanted to do in terms of composition, in terms of color use, and so on. So, like the first pieces I have down here, like that is more or less blind, starting an algorithm and hoping for the best. Um, Whereas these, what I started with Genesis, is way more like handheld. I don't have like it's not the same algorithm that decides to put all these rings here, uh, and does this. Like it's the same flow type, which is why like that's the same system, but it's very deliberate how I want to create the composition and so on. So like here I'm more like a painter painting with my algorithm,
Mhm.
more than being Jackson Pollock and pushing things on the canvas. Yeah, and that's just developed from there.
Great.
You can see my interest gravitating more and more towards like stronger line work and so on in the um, as the years went by. but yeah, my interest in color is still there, very much. And if you see, so this is my Higgett Nunk
Oh
creations.
yeah, the one with the numbers, I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is um my very first NFT,
Wow.
which is I started with on Higgett Nunk really just trying to get my feet wet. We just had concluded the first January, which is like an event that a couple of generative artists started with prompts for each day, and then just seeing how different artists would interpret that prompt and see what came out of it. So I had this catalog of things that I could play with, and I chose my favorite ones. Should be said that this predates Fidenza, so it's not like
Hey.
I was no, I was it was a good choice as the first mint in 2021 for sure.
And how does
Um,
that how's that actual experience of minting something for the very first time? Was it nerve-wracking since you weren't sure what the reception is, or like how did you like what was your experience like?
I I wouldn't call it nerve wracking as such. Like I think the Tezos community was like super supportive of artists wanting to try out their
Mm.
platform. I had one of the core. I don't know if he's a core developer, but at least like he's very centrally placed in the Tesla community. Like kind of just saying, well, just DM me if you want to like get a hands on doing all these things, and he sent me some tests and so on. Like so it felt like, well, that's nice, and he bought the first one, so that's nice. Like that's um and I was I was lucky enough to sell quite a few of my first mints, so I began collecting myself on Higgett Nung, and that kind of, yeah,
Yeah,
uh,
I definitely
added
want to.
to the community feel of it
Yeah,
all.
I definitely want to talk to you as a because I know you are like an active collector in the space, which I think is awesome to see. Artists supporting other artists. But I do want to jump into Rapture a little bit.
Mhm.
That's your
Yes.
first drop on Art Blocks back in August of 2021,
Yeah.
and I would love to just start by you telling us a little bit about like the inspiration behind Rapture. I know you showed some of those earlier mints, which kind of detailed like some of the earlier iterations of it, but I would love to to kind of just like go through there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, Rapture really was like the idea for me was to kind of have an ending to this swirly system that I started developing with Genesis, with my Genesis series. I've used it in some like continued developing on it and used it in different ways in other series, and it kind of felt like it was ripe for doing something different, something without me defining the composition so much and so on. And I wanted to kind of also personally say, well, this is the end for this. Like this is where it ends. Hopefully in a bang. Um, and kind of take everything that I've learned since with this system since like 2019 and push it to new heights. Yeah, so that was really the goal. I wanted to end it with a fanfare and say, well, this was something that for me reignited my artistic aspirations back in 2019, and I wanted to pay due diligence to that. And I think
Yeah.
like it's you can argue that it's not like particularly unique to do flows. Like that is something that every generative artist has probably done in one way or another. I had this feeling that and maybe I was just getting too close to it, but that I did something slightly different. That my flow was, I wouldn't say better than everyone else's, but it was different enough and could differentiate itself to being actually something that was allowed to live on the grand stage.
Yeah, and for people that aren't aware of this, Rapture is definitely best viewed in live view, just because like when people obviously people see the initial shapes of like the squares and the circles, but honestly when you just watch them live, I absolutely love that that shake feature I'm
Yeah.
calling it, where basically it shakes a little bit and then it just explodes almost, and then it has like that final resting image. How did you go
Mm.
about like setting that shake speed, and was it was that hard to kind of figure out like the best speed for
Well, no, it was that was
that?
like I was like well, this looks nice. So like the shaking is that was not the thing that held me up at night. Um, the shaking was never like intended from the get go. So like I tried to add something that didn't feel too out of place, but also I wanted something that didn't feel too much as part of the artwork, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, so the reason I added it was because that Rapture takes some time to generate, and you can't draw anything while it's generating because it's basically generating the data in the reverse order that it needs to be drawn in. So like I can, I just have to wait for it to finish. Um, and so I was like, it takes between 10 and 30 seconds. And like to me, coming from my usual, I'm not used to doing real-time art in any way. Like I have systems that take hours to generate and I'm just happy with it. So for me, like 10 seconds, 30 seconds, like that's instantly. But Eric advised me that people minting would not feel the same if they just had like a blank screen and Chrome saying it was unresponsive and so on. So
Yeah.
I had to I had to do something and make some concessions about how the user experience would be, but I was still very very certain that raptures are static images. Like that's where the art is. It's not an animation. It's not something else. It's static images that you can experience, and so this idea of at that point I've already like kind of written out the story about Rapture with like these seals and so on. So it kind of just made sense that they would shake before they explode. Like they would have this, or I have too much power confined in me, so I like so
Yeah.
that just makes sense for me and felt like something that fitted into the narrative without like taking away the focus of the stationary still art.
Great. And I'm curious to know, and I noticed that actually, would you mind talking to us a little bit about some of those features that are involved in all these mints? I would love to kind of dig into. I know there's a couple mentions of like gems being present or absent, which we can
Mm.
talk about in a second. But yeah, I would love to talk about some of the other features that are involved with these mints?
Yeah, so it's not like I'm a super spiritual person, but like gemstones and minerals were a big part of my something I collected. So I have a collector gene basically, and as a kid, I collected minerals and gemstones just because they're beautiful. So like that has been a big part of my childhood. So the difference, like I know the names of the back of my head, and it kind of I can't remember how it came to be, but basically I felt that we needed, or I needed, something to tie everything together. It's like it. There had to be a reason for all of these pieces to exist, basically, and something that tied them together in a shared narrative. Um, and I do think they look magical. Like the feel of them is very much like you can certainly see some RPG game use something that looked like that as a spell animation or something. So I don't know. It just came to me, and I kind of began developing it from there in terms of the different features, like how they fitted into everything. Yeah.
And I'm curious to know, like, as far as selecting those specific six gems, are those is there any significance to you? Like, did they relate to someone in your family, or personal to you?
Oh no, I would. I wish I could say that there was like super profound meaning behind every choice I make artistically. There is not. I had the color. I had the color scales or the color scheme set out before I came to the whole gemstone idea. So these are, for me, these are kind of the archetypal gems that fits with the color. That's more or less all we have in it.
Great. And then I would love to also just talk a little bit more about, selecting color palettes. I think you executed them like incredibly well throughout this entire project. And I'm just curious to know how you go about, selecting color palettes, and if they have, if you have a personal favorite color combination.
For Rapture,
Yeah, for
sure.
Rapture.
So well, the colors are. It was actually like it took some time because I wanted to have like a lot of prime colors. Like every gemstone had to have like a very strong identity. Even before they were gemstones, but just colors. Like I wanted each different color to be like to stand out and be vivid and be strong. And figuring out seven very strong colors that can actually go together in more or less any combination and have like both dark and light shades combined with each other in any combination, like that took a lot of fine tuning in terms of figuring out the exact correct hue. And I think I did pretty well. There is one color combination that I programmatically disallowed, but that is more or less it. And that's you can't have a dark yellow background, basically because dark yellow is like it's not a nice color. Basically, it's okay as part of a gradient,
Mhm.
but like filling out the entire screen, it's just icky. So I had to like if the color scheme was of the type where you had a colored background, I just had to like programmatically make sure that it wouldn't be dark yellow,
Mhm.
basically. But apart from that, I'm pretty sure I allowed whatever happened by randomness, um, which is like yeah again for this kind of color setup, it really requires some um, that you feel good about whatever
Yeah.
combination come out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious
Um,
to know, like, yeah, I don't know if you're able to share some of those, and any mints that maybe surprised you, or some that kind of stood out from the rest of the project.
yeah, let's see. Oh, so this is actually I don't know. No, this is the old one. This is during development. But let's see here. Um, let's. I just need to tags. There we go. I picked something out just so I don't have to
Oh
scroll
yeah,
through all that. It was actually like it was a pretty fun thing to like go through all of them again
yeah.
with some time after. Like I haven't thought that much about Rapture lately, so it was interesting to go through them all again. Um, so yes,
Yeah,
let's
I'd love
see.
for you to tell us like a little bit about why you specifically like, some of
Yeah,
these
this
mints.
is not like this piece in particular is like I like it, but it's more like this combination of lagging the support and having the oscillating proclivity is like I think it was only after the release that I really came to enjoy that. It's kind of um, it's kind of a middle ground between like these very solid shapes and those really weird ones that you see with the aftermath, where like the feeling of the shield has just completely vanished. So like it just have this the shape is there, but it's just like you can almost feel it disappearing while looking at it. So that was something that kind of surprised me that I didn't really recognize before during development. Um, this one was just like ice cream cone.
Yeah, that looks definitely looks like ice cream cone.
There was a couple, and also I think that yeah, like this clock. I During development, I never really had the sensation of these things looking like real life, whatever. It was only after the release that I was, oh, this looks like something. Um, so that definitely surprised me. It was quite fun to look into. So this is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
It's just like it's very simple. It's kind of just oozing out, bleeding out, an amazing way. And I think like I have one more like where do I have it? Like this one. Like this is to me
Yeah.
that is one of the top three. Like it has this weird painterly feel to it that I did not anticipate during development. Like I had not seen anything like this while developing it.
And
Um,
that
and
that bottom left actually kind of gives it a little bit of a cube feel. It kind of gives it like a three-dimensional look
yeah,
in
that's
a
true.
way.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the darkness around the lines. Yeah, gives it this shading,
Hmm.
even though it's purely 2D. This is another one of my absolute favorite. It's also something that I did not anticipate at all.
Yeah.
Will like these are all like very smooth flows, which was something that I only added like towards the end of development. Like if you see the Genesis pieces, they all have rather hectic flow. But I really grew to like them a lot. Um, this is another one that is like it is kind of a misty feel to it
Hmm.
that I really enjoy. So like this is more the type of flow that I set out to develop. Like very chaotic and hectic, but still very organic. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that one because it's like you said, it's very chaotic, but then at the same time, you can still see the the circular
yeah,
shapes built into there. I think that's a really beautiful piece.
yeah. This one also like I hadn't really noticed that before I went through them all this today, but like that is just weird. Like
Yeah, like
it is like in a sense where if you hadn't seen the rest of the project, you would have like it feels
not know.
structured in some way, but there is very little to inform your head about what is going on.
So are
Um,
there five circles in that, or is it
there are
four?
five, yeah, there are five circles. Just
Yeah.
and the faceted look makes it feel like it's 3D in some sense. Like there is some mesh going on, but it's just like completely bonkers. So the mind kind of begins to look for some three-dimensional thing, like
Hmm.
figuring out what is this object that I'm looking at, and it's just refusing to be something at the same time. I found that super interesting, and
Yeah.
completely passed over it the first time I looked through the collection. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And I appreciate you sharing all those pieces. I think it's such a well done project. And I'm curious to know, like, do you have options for people to, offer, do you offer like signed prints? Are those available to collectors, or
Yeah.
and
So
how can people reach out and get prints if they have a collected piece?
yeah, absolutely. So 2 seconds. So basically, this is my page about the Rapture project where people can read more about where it came from and development and so on. And in the bottom, you have some information about printing. So basically, I offer a single signed print of each piece. First, first claim, first get, but you have to own the NFT to claim it. And you can see which one has already been claimed down here. So you can just reach out to me if you're in possession of a Rapture piece that you want to get a print of.
Great.
Um, yeah, I don't
I love.
like. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I have no plan of closing down printing. So like, there's no rush. I don't want you to hoard a print just to have it in the tube. But if you want to put it on the wall, then you can just reach out.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you sharing that and talking a little bit more about Rapture. I do want to jump in now to talk about Screens, which was your first creative drop, part of the Series 6 release on January 31st. I honestly think Series 6 is honestly one of the best series in the entire curated collection.
I
Um,
agree.
I want to know, yeah, I mean, I know you might be biased, but I think it's just like, it's such a well rounded display, I mean, just like collection of different projects, and
Mm.
each artist did a fantastic job. I was curious to know, like, how was your drop day experience when releasing Screens? Because obviously you released the, project prior, releasing Rapture, but obviously with a curated drop, I'm curious to know, like, how was that, like, more of a nerve wracking experience for you, or how was that?
Well, it's it was very very calm. Like and like if it had been my first one, I would probably be have been super psyched and nervous and so on. And like there is of course some nervousness every time like you set out your creation into the world, but like Rapture was batshit crazy,
Yeah.
releasing in late August, around the peak of everything. Like it sold out in 6 minutes. I was just like,
Yeah.
it took a month or so to get over that experience. So like I had tried at that point to experience how crazy it can be, and compared to that, the screens release was so much nicer and so much like you could feel that it sounds weird, but if you feel like people are FOMOing into to buying things, like you're of course happy that people want your art, but
Mhm.
it also feels kind of weird that people buy it for like maybe not the absolute best reasons.
Mhm.
But this time with screens, it just felt much more organic in some way, and it was just like you can I could follow and chat in Blog Talk while I released it, and like just felt nice. So yeah,
Well,
it
that's
was
great. Nah, yeah, I know that everyone just has a different experience, especially for curated. So I
mm,
think it's always interesting to see and get perspective of like how, each individual artist has yeah, does
yeah,
during their release. Do you have any early prototypes actually to kind of kick things off? I don't know if you have any early prototypes of Screens they're able to share with
yeah.
us.
So well, the I would say the earliest prototypes of screens are the constructive series, which I worked on while waiting for Rapture to be released. So that was released like as a one of ones, just around the Rapture release, and kind of knew almost at the get go that I wanted to take this aesthetic, at least the texture and coloring, and put it into something else and something bigger. So like it grew from there, but also like after Rapture, I had I was in need of a serious break from doing art. Like it was very clear to me that I needed to step back and only do art for my own reasons. Like you
Hmm.
can feel that you have to chase a success. You can feel like you have to produce and produce and produce to like ride the wave. And I was kind of very mindful that that was not something that I really wanted to dive into. So I was doing this constructive series and I finished that, and then I kind of took a long break from doing art. But while I was doing that, I had a lot of thoughts about how I wanted to take this feel and then put it into a long form format. So I was I was designing the system in my head, um, while while not coding at all. And one other thing that was kind of a thing that I at some point had to address was that constructive pieces took an hour to generate, which was obviously not something that would fit art blocks that well. Um, so I so the actual no, then we're moving on to the actual prototypes. So um, these are all the things that have actually I never delete stuff. So
Wow.
these are
Yeah. Now
all
I'm glad that you don't, because I think that's just like, it just shows like the history of this
okay. I
specific
just
project.
need to have a different view. Okay, so date modified. There we go. So the first prototype. Are you ready for it? It's
Yeah.
crazy.
I'm ready.
Uh, there you
Oh wow, that's cool.
go. So the first thing I just had to do was to figure out whether this was even viable to do in a browser in close to real time. And well, it was. And this was kind of me just playing. It was the first time I was doing shader based WebGL stuff, and this is just me trying to like console myself that this is actually doable. And I was doing that, and then I got distracted by another project, one on one I was working on with a composer. So I put away all of that, and then once I had maybe not finished it, but once I was ready to kind of dive into to screens again with all of the ideas that had been brewing in my head, I was ready for it. And that also means that it was like super quick development, from like sitting down coding the first like really screens code, if you ignore all of the texturing stuff. It was, let's see, 11:37.
Oh wow.
So this is just me figuring out like the structure thing, just iterating on that. And you can see like it starts at 11:37, and now we're at 3 p.m., and just some debug view and all of that, and boom. So that's
Yeah. So what's the time frame difference between like when you first, that first iteration until like
yeah, let's
this one
see,
right here?
11 to 8, 11 in the morning to 8 in the evening.
Wow.
So and like there's obviously this is not finished, but like it's pretty close. Like you can definitely see that this is a screens piece. And going from there, it was just like you can see all of the things in here are all based on circles and straight lines. So for a long time, like I knew I wanted more than that, but for a long time I just like confined myself to these and thought more about perfecting all of the other stuff in the system. But yeah, like it was like this is day two of me coding, and like
Wow.
um, I'm already adding borders to stuff and doing like interesting stuff. So like it progressed really really fast.
Yeah.
But I also knew exactly what I wanted to do when I sat down coding it.
So,
But then again, like this is November, and so you can see like I spent at least 2 months just sitting down and really fine tuning every decision around it.
and
Uh,
how do you know that it's, the project is complete? Like, is there like an aha moment, or is it never complete, and you're just like, hey, like this is I feel really happy with it. Like I feel like that's got to be really tough for artists.
Um, I mean, it is tough. I had a very good feeling about screens when I said it was done. Like I felt it was ready for the world,
Hmm.
and like you need, like you have to think, like I've seen thousands of outputs at this point, and sure, a lot of those thousands are from a stage of the code where it's not done yet. So like I haven't seen thousands and thousands of um the finished algorithm, but I know it intimately. I know what it's capable of usually.
Hmm.
Like I can anticipate what it's probably going to do. Let's see. I Where do we have?
You know how many like total outputs you created before you decided, all right, like it's good to go? It's
I
like,
haven't counted it, and at some point I turned off the automatic saving just because it was clogging up my hard drive. So at some point, the amount of pieces um, were diminishing. So this is
mhm,
just to kind of show when I'm developing. You can see like this is just me fixing the hash, and I'm kind of working on fixing something with the stroking. You can see, and just
mhm.
continuously updating. This is actually still the same hash, but um, I changed something in the code that means that everything after that point is different. And you can see myself just trying to focus in on some stuff, figuring out what's wrong, and so on. Just to give a feel like this is just um, like one piece every minute, more or less, that I'm just continuously updating to figure out what's. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, so the thing I was probably working on was the edges. Like I wanted to have like the edges shouldn't be too straight. Like it doesn't fit it if I have this grainy texture, but I'm capable of drawing straight lines with machine precision. So I needed to figure out something to make them not wobbly, but just have this analog feel. And it like basically it worked really well at low resolutions just by being low resolution. Like it had a great feel, but as as soon as I upped the resolution, just looked too clean. And this is just me trying out different things, figuring out how to make the edges look grainy enough, and in a resolution independent manner. um
I'm
yeah.
curious to know about like the graininess because it definitely gives that like screen print kind of look and vibe to it. Is that
Mhm.
something you had experience on like in the past, or
Like
is that
silk
like,
screening?
yeah, silk print, yeah.
Um, n Not in like, not firsthand experience. I haven't, tried doing it myself, yet. So I'm currently in the process of actually doing silk screen printing, with a pro, and, like, that is super interesting to get into and get like real firsthand experience around that,
Yeah.
because it's definitely different than just knowing about it, knowing what kind of aesthetic that it produces. It's very, very different. Actually, the first time he saw like the drunk alignment feature, he was like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like that is usually how we just test out the screens, that we just like smash them onto the top, and it's just like hopefully misaligned. So like that was not intentional, but it really, like, it had an actual aesthetic semblance to something that you're actually doing while you're developing screen printing techniques. So that was
Absolutely.
kind of interesting to see.
I'm curious to know also with like the live rendering, like when you were to check out these pieces in live view and it shows basically the layering being built
Mhm.
to the final image, was that always a part of the project or was that something you kind of thought of a little bit later on in the process?
I wouldn't like it wasn't in my vision the first time I sat down working on it, but it became pretty obvious to me that it was more or less real time on my computer. Um, but I also knew that it probably wouldn't be on everyone's computer. So I was kind of thinking about how to go about that, and so it wasn't as much a crutch as it was in Rapture,
Mhm.
basically because it's much faster. And it pretty early on dawned on me like it could be fun to see the layering happening progressively, just in terms of getting a feel for how it's actually built up. And the first time that I actually showed it like that, it made ton of sense to me, and was something like I really wanted to perfect that experience, because to me, the sensation of not knowing what's coming, but just seeing how the structure gradually gets refined and changed during the development of the piece is really interesting. And it's not really something that you can experience unless you create an outer band um, piece, or if you're minting the piece for the first time. Like, because you'll see a thumbnail before you click into anything with screen, so you know what's coming, and it kind of ruins the feeling because you know where it's building up to, and the feeling of not knowing what's being built up to is like super interesting. And it's also, I have on my web page, let's see, on my screens page, I've made a couple of different small tools, and one of them is just like grab a random screens mint without telling you what it is, and just see it being built up, so you don't know what's coming. And to me, like, that is one of the ways to kind of get back that feeling of not knowing what's coming, but still, like, the collection is out there now, you can't really change that. So unless you're running the algorithm and creating out of band things, then this is perhaps the best way of getting that feel.
Yeah,
um,
and another one of your tools I know that you have is the screen scaling section of your website, which I think
yeah.
is super cool because you can basically zoom in and out of, a specific piece.
Yeah. So let's see if we just so this was this surprised me to see how, like, how crazy people were about this feature. Like, for me, it has been like a kind of a debugging help to be able to zoom out and see, understand why the different actors and like why the screens were positioned as it was. I was very clear that this was not an aesthetic that I wanted to include in my series, like the zoomed out view. But when I began writing about it and just showed a zoomed out view, people were really into it. So it was like that came as a surprise for me. Like, let's see, we just
So
zoom
this
out.
is like the regular view right here as
Yeah,
is,
that's
right?
the regular view.
Yeah.
Let's see, and it seems like I have. Oh, there we go.
Wow.
And that's
It's
where it's coming from. Yeah. So, and I also think, like for me, it was never a secret or a surprise that things was happening outside of what we were looking at. But obviously, if you don't know like the underlying system and how it's built up, then well, sure, it's a surprise that things are happening that you don't see. But I just like I had been completely oblivious to that fact. So it's really fun to see people going crazy with playing with it.
so this specific mint right here is that zoomed out? Is that 7 times, or how does that, like, what is it calculating?
Yeah, so it is increasing the size of the viewport basically 7 times. So the regular mint would be like this this size, but just in the center. So
Hmm.
it's probably around here. Um, and you can also, like, you can zoom in um, by picking a, well, that's it's not super. So sometimes, usually, I would say that zooming in is a better way of creating a new interesting artwork than
Hmm.
zooming out. Zooming out obvious often becomes too busy and too well, not not great. Like, it's fun to see, and it's fun to have the knowledge about your piece that this is what's going on outside of it, but it's not like aesthetically. I wouldn't call it an improvement. While zooming in can sometimes create some really cool simplistic compositions.
Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah, and then plus you can just kind of look into those details a little bit more, or maybe like a little bit more easily identifiable as far as like the different graininess and the splotches, which I think really give it that a really good strong feeling of for screens. I think is just like really well executed.
Thank you.
I'm curious to know about like the color palettes for this one because obviously you chose Bauhaus and some a little bit more iconic
Mm.
color palettes. My personal favorite is Berlin. I think that color combination is fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about the color selections for the specific project?
Yeah, so a couple of the palettes came from the constructive series, so those are shared between those. Um, and a lot of the colors are heavily inspired by Bauhaus posters. So I would usually pick have a poster that I really was into the color palette, and I would extract the colors, and then I would kind of play with them and tune them in to have a nice like a nice cohesive feel. So that was, I would say, maybe seven seven of the color palettes actually came from either Bauhaus posters or other kind of um, modern artworks, also like Russian constructivism is also like a huge inspiration for screens, and I was also sampling colors from some of that. The naming of the palettes are not in any way related to whatever like the posters that they come from. It's just um, I would say a bit more personal in terms of like the feelings that they elicit in me. So so yeah, and then there is the rhino, penguin, and jungle, which are actually small prints from my own home. That I've always just really enjoyed the color selection in these three postcards that I have. One of them showing a penguin, and one showing a gorilla, and one showing a rhino. Um, and I wanted to play with that, and it just somehow they just fit it in. Like they are obviously jungle stands out because it's so like it's very green,
Mhm.
and like I think maybe autumn is the only other palette that actually has any green, and then there's the jungle that just have like all of these different shades of green. So it obviously stands out, and I also think that's one of the palettes that divide people. But I'm happy with that. Like it's okay that people don't like everything, and some people like something. Um, but and penguin is also like this extremely cold palette that is like really differentiated from a lot of the warm tones that you have in the Bauhaus posters and so on. But somehow like the subdued colors and everything like it just fitted together. I was super happy that I got to kind of incorporate that kind of color into screens as well.
Yeah, I thought you did just like an excellent job just selecting the colors, and it's such a nice, diverse. Like you said, you got the blues where it's a little bit colder, the greens. I think just like complemented, that specific palette, and yeah, I'm curious to know, are you able to share some of some of your favorite pieces from the specific project?
Absolutely. Let's see. Um, yeah. So. Uh, I always saying always, even though I've only made two releases, but I'm always kind of downloading the renders, and would probably like during the first week I will go through them all and kind of pick out my favorites, just to have them close to me. But it's always interesting, both with sorry, just talking and doing stuff at the same
No problem.
time. Both with Rapture and also with screens, like there are pieces that I initially glance over, and the great thing about bringing something into the world is that I can get to see other people's reactions to them, and there are pieces where I was just initially, well, wouldn't say it's ugly, like I feel like all the screens pieces are quite beautiful, but where I was like, this is a standard output, and then I hear why someone else is really into that exact piece, and I was like, oh yeah, that's actually true. Like that's super cool. And then like you can feel your own perception change as you engage with collectors and listen to their stories and their um, yeah, their experience with the art, which is like it's super interesting because like you're the creator, but like you
Mhm.
don't hold all the cards, you don't hold all the knowledge, and especially because art is so subjective, and a lot of it is related to how you um, I missed the English word there, but like the train of thought that a piece sets off, and
Mhm.
maybe you just need a kick to kind of see, oh yes, oh my god, that's super cool, and that has been really interesting to see my feelings for certain pieces develop throughout interacting with collectors. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's see. So these are the pieces that I'm currently. Those are my personal grails or whatever we'll call them. And like this one, for instance, like I love like how two part it is, like a
Mhm.
lower left part that is just chaotic, and then a more calm upper part, and it's just almost diagonally
Yeah.
perfectly divided.
It looks like there's so many different layers to that one also, just like on
Yeah.
top of each other as it goes down to the bottom left side.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it has this fantastic blend of almost horizontal
Mhm.
lines, and then these lines at an angle that just breaks everything up. Um, yeah, this one is obviously quite unique. I think that is probably my favorite black and white. It has this fantastic like it almost feels like one of these where it just draws like random scribbles, and then depending on how many times you cross, like you overlap, it switches from black or white or black or white, so you get this all of these different shapes. um this is again like these are some of the things that I didn't really anticipate, like this almost perfect symmetry that you have, because you have two radial actors positioned almost at the same height and almost at the exact same distance from the left and right, and have more or less the same kind of angular momentum to their screens, and they're just like booming in over each other. And I really didn't like these kind of. I think there are others where you have this kind of symmetry that I just didn't anticipate. Yeah. This one is like I think probably the one with the strongest use of negative space. Like a lot of the pieces are really colorful, and like to the extent that lack of color in this series is really something that stands out. And when you have like lack of color coupled with some very strong um, lines and very strong figures of color, then it's really striking. And this one is really one of my favorites. This one is perhaps the
Wow.
most surprising to me. This is Fire's Grail, and like it took me a while to figure out what was going on. Like this staircase pattern, I really couldn't figure out before I like really sat down and oh, it's just more or less perfectly aligned square actors that are creating that, and then the red is just the background shining through it all, and it's just deeply
Yeah.
surprising to me.
That's crazy. You never saw anything like that during like the testing?
Well, I said with very high certainty, no, I did not. But going through all of the tests, I actually I found one that looked a bit like it. But I did like it. It wasn't so strong, so it didn't really register to me. It was just one of those like 2 second glances. But having seen this, and then like uh, I knew what to look for. I found another one that was a bit like it, but out of maybe 5,000 outputs, I think it's still pretty unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is one again, one of those symmetric ones. Like you can almost feel uh, like two loudspeakers on either side, like throwing sound at each other and resonating with each other. It's an extremely powerful feeling. Um, this one is just so aggressive. Like it's to me it like feels like someone is just walking up to you and then just smashing a window in front of like it's just
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so aggressive and in your face with the lines and the strong sharp angles, and like it's very very powerful. I wouldn't say pleasant, but art doesn't have to be pleasant always. Like I'm usually in pursuit of beauty when I make art, but it's okay that that we end up with
Yeah.
different
Yeah, absolutely.
emotions as well. This was the one we looked at before, and this is also just one of my absolute favorites. The perspective here is completely nuts. Like to me, it seems like I'm standing on the ground, looking upwards towards some like modernistic city. But I do know that every perspective in screens is looking down on something, and like I really couldn't figure out what was going on. Also here, and zooming out didn't help. Like I still can't quite figure out why I'm getting the sensations that I'm getting. So like these are always just super fun for me to look into. This is
Wow.
just like it's not surprising as such, but it's just so clean,
It
and
is,
I
yeah.
think that chance would have it that the final kind of angle just
Meets the
exactly,
top. Yeah.
yeah, like it's just too perfect.
I love
Uh,
how the bottom left of that also, there's like you can see just that little like triangle, which makes like the edge of,
yeah,
the
it
little
confines
side.
it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's so good. This is also just like very very strong. One of those that has a more pronounced three-dimensional feel, and just like you have the two shapes and they're just so strong. Even though like the radial actor is chopped off, it's still like it keeps its feeling of being radial, and it's just yeah very very strong. Again, this is yeah can't really
Wow,
say
yeah, that
too
one's
much. Like
fantastic.
this is all I know there are some in Block Talk that are really into spirals.
Mhm.
Um, to me, like they're extremely striking, which is also probably the reason why people have latched onto them a lot. But they're also quite aggressive, and I'm usually more interested in the more subdued compositions. But this one is absolutely striking, especially because the center is placed so down below in the bottom left corner that it's the composition really becomes quite interesting just purely by the position of the center. Um, this is also like I've shown one more of the collapse before, like the red collapse piece, and to me this is so the collapse trait or the collapse setup is really that you have like one type of actor, like that could be something that creates circles or something that creates squares or straight lines or whatever, and you create 50 different of these and just create one screen from each of these. So if you see on this one, this is one actor giving rise to a lot of screens. Like they all share the same center, they all share the same like defining traits. They are just all emanating from the same actor, as I call it here.
Mhm.
Here it's 50 different actors just creating one screen, but they're all of the same type. And to me, like those create some of the most interesting compositions because there is so much chaos going on, and the possibility of emergent behavior is just so strong because you don't have these very very strong geometric shapes to define it. Like you don't have this one circle that kind of grasps the eyes. You just have a lot of different things that can interplay in interesting ways, and for me, it creates a lot of the my favorite pieces. These kind of more subdued, but also
Mhm.
more like balanced and pleasant pieces.
And
Um,
can people get prints of these as well? Like if you go to the website, you'll have kind of a list also, or is that something in the pipeline?
it's in the pipeline. So prints will come. They will be free to the holders. I am super stoked to actually just print as many as of these and just set it out to the world. But it's like it's logistically hellish.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm well, it hasn't been that long, but it feels like everything in crypto is moving super fast. But
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that I will soon get going with it. Like currently with Rapture, I had this very manual process of um, getting addresses and verifying ownership and so on. And I really, really would like to not have to do that. So I'm waiting for someone that is going to build something cool,
Okay,
so
cool.
so I can focus on just sending out screen sprint. So the plan is to everyone, like kind of with Rapture, like it's first come first serve, one unique print signed per NFT. But it will be free for an A2 size, and sent with eternal gratitude from me. Then I'm also, like I talked or I said before, I'm in talk with an actual like silk screen printer. Silk screen is not a perfect medium for just
Yeah,
making one unique print, because like you have to make an actual screen for each color and so on, and that's gets quite expensive. But I do plan to create, either based on the Robston mints, or maybe get the community together to decide on some out of band pieces. Create some silkscreen versions of those in some higher edition, and distribute to Rapture and Screen owners.
cool. That's super
So
exciting. I think that's awesome that you're exploring the whole screen printing process, and I know it's definitely not easy. I've seen the process in play, and it's very time consuming. And I mean, yeah, especially there's just a lot of different layers and colors, and but it's really cool that you're able to explore that. I do want to move forward and talk a little bit about you as a collector, and I'm just curious to know, like, yeah, what's your like what goes behind you selecting specific pieces, or do you go for artists that that are friends that you've kind of been in touch with, or just like people that are maybe like pioneers in the gen art space? Yeah, I'm just kind of curious to know like what your thoughts are on collecting.
um yes, I buy stuff I like. So that is, um and I come into collecting, especially after having released two pretty successful art blocks projects, with a lot of privilege in terms of not needing to earn anything, um, collecting stuff and selling it back. So, like if I buy something, I buy it forever, and that's something I can do because I can recoup that by creating art.
Mhm.
Um, so I have I can kind of ignore, I can try to ignore any hype and anything going on in Blog Talk, but of course you can get into a rush. So I buy what I feel like I want to buy. After Rapture, I bought an archetype, which was something like, that's ludicrously expensive. Um, but kind of like I really wanted that, and at that point, like I had no concept of what actually meant to spend that amount of money. It was just like it was all a blur at that point.
Yeah.
And I did the same after Screens, buying a ringer. Again, just for me, like I really really respect Dimitri as an artist. I think ringers is a fantastic project, and I've wanted one for a long time, and I wanted one that was like a bit more than just the regular floor
Mhm.
pieces. So I have to time that kind of purchases with releasing a project, and doing it before I'm actually back at my senses again,
Yeah.
because it is like this, if you think about it, it's crazy. Especially like I don't plan on ever selling it again. So like it's the potential of price increase, doesn't make sense to me to think about.
Yeah.
It is just sunk money. Um, so like when things are really really expensive, I need to make sure, like, do I really want to do that? Like
Yeah.
it's
These
not
are gonna
something.
hold on to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I So yeah, I'm really just just buying stuff that I really really like, and of course that coincide with artists that I deeply respect, and a lot of them are thankfully my friends. So, but I also like, it makes sense to me to like both mint, because like I want to support artists that I know and respect, but also to buy in secondary because like there's a lot of people spending money on our art, and some of them do that both to earn money or to like build up a portfolio and so on. So like for me it makes sense to also funnel earnings back into that community.
Yeah, I love that. When it's always nice seeing like artists supporting other artists. I think there's something really beautiful about that. So, yeah, I think that's really cool, and I think you're a fantastic collector as you are, creating beautiful artwork. So, I really appreciate all that. I'm curious to know that do you have any, other projects? I know, you just finished up screens just recently, but are there any, projects in the works or exhibits, planned for sometime later in the year?
Nothing of great substance. I am like kind of, as I talked about, I have decided to like deliberately move against the feeling in crypto of things having to move really really fast.
Mm,
Like again, it's a huge privilege to feel that you don't need to succeed anymore, because you kind of did that. Like I didn't have any goal going into creating generative art, and even if I had, I would surely have surpassed them at this point, at least in terms of
yeah.
recognition and earning. So I can kind of just try to take care of myself and try to be more deliberate about my art. um so I don't have like huge amounts of things I want to do. Well, I have a lot of things I want to do, but I don't have any things that I'm working on right now. What I want to do in more like um well, less solid terms, is that I would like to go back and explore like single edition and smaller editions more.
Hmm.
I think going into screens, I was very very clear about my where I wanted that to head, and I was also like I had learned a lot through Rapture and during the course of development for screens, and in terms of creating a long form project to support like 1,000 edition, and like it could be fun to try again at some point, but like it really has to be something that I feel can artistically support it, and I feel like screens could do that, but um, those kind of ideas and projects just doesn't come every year, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. It takes a little bit of
Um,
time.
so I want to explore something smaller. I also want to kind of give back to my collectors in some sense. So like I'm not planning on airdropping artwork into people's wallet or something, but I'm very very aware of like the support that the collectors have given me. So I want to let them know that it's a mutual feeling and a shared uh, path that we're walking on. So like you will probably see smaller projects from me this year, and it will probably not be something that I will earn on. So,
Well, we look forward to, seeing what you come up with later on this year. And I think that's really cool. You're exploring, smaller drops. I think that's always nice. Yeah, is there anything else you want to add before I let you go? I know you have. I know you're a super busy person, and yeah, really appreciate your time.
yeah. Well, it's evening here, so I'm not super busy, but um, well, I just want to like I think I've done that repeatedly in Blog Talk and Discord in general, but just like a huge show of appreciation to people that have minted my stuff. Mainly, like it it's of course fantastic that people want to buy my stuff, but like honestly, I just went to visit Randers Regnskov, which was like the recipient of the Rapture donation, which went into their wildlife foundation, buying up and protecting Ecuadorian rainforests. And like that that visit was just so inspiring and so humbling to be able to be like, it's not me giving money, it's collectors, but I'm still a, I'm the head that is giving it, and that was just such a huge privilege, and I'm just deeply humbled and forever grateful for people giving me the chance to donate that. So I'm just really trying to say again and again, like, that is one of the best things about what has happened in this crazy last year, and I'm just so happy to be able to do that. So thank you all.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you being on, After Dinner Mints, talking about your projects. I'm curious to know, like, actually, can you tell us how can people reach you? Should they have any questions? Maybe any social media plugs?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Thomas P 85. Yes, 85. Now you know my age. Um, and I'm on Blog Talk pretty regularly. I should probably try to dial that back. But I'm there. So you can just, yeah, reach out on Discord or on Twitter, and I will do my best to respond. I'm not always successful in that, but that is mainly, that's not out of any willful ignoring, but just me having too much to do. But
Great.
do reach.
Yeah, what about your website? How can people check out your website and look about prints and some of your other projects?
Yeah, so the website is like a weird name, dataimaginist.com. It harkens back to when I was doing more like data visualization, but it's still my website. And like you can see up here in the art section, that's all my prints that you can order if you want to. And like the NFT part is just like showing the different wallets that I have and having links to Rapture and screen readouts and so on. So yeah,
Very cool. Well, Thomas, thank you so much again for joining me on After Dinner Minutes. It's a pleasure to kind of do a deep dive into Rapture, screens, learning about some of your other projects, and also just learning a little bit about, what you're going to plan for the future. So really appreciate you being on After Dinner Minutes.
thank you for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Just a couple news and notes. On next week's After Dinner Mints, which is April 13th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, we have generative artist Dmitry Cherniak, who will be returning back on After Dinner Mints, and Art Blocks Chief of Staff, Kate. So that'll be a one-on-one conversation. Really, really looking forward to that one. We have a Twitter Spaces discussion called Minters and Makers. It's a weekly show with a variety of artists, collectors, and other notable community members with conversations surrounding art. Our next discussion will be tomorrow, which is Thursday, April the 7th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We have Modner Wolf, Ryan Stroll, and Jacob Gold. And you can tune into that conversation via the Artblocks Twitter handle, which is artblocks_IO. The discussions are all recorded and available in podcast format, which is available on all the major platforms such as Apple, Spotify, and Google. Additionally, After Dinner Mints is also a podcast, so our discussion today with Thomas will also be turned into a podcast available on Apple, Spotify, Google, all those major platforms, probably in the next week or two. And finally, we have a weekly newsletter that gets delivered once a week with information on upcoming drops and art-related news. You can find a link to the newsletter in the description of this YouTube video. Again, I want to thank Thomas for joining me on After Dinner Mints. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to the Art Blocks YouTube channel. Be kind to each other, buy what you love, and we will see you all next week. Thanks, Thomas, and I hope everyone has a great day.